Foxclan Publications. Stepping into the light.
Hello, everyone. This is Matt of the Authors Podcast, Stepping into the Light. I would just like to take a moment to ask everyone that is watching this video to like and to share and to also subscribe. That helps us out tremendously so that we can bring more people to our channel and get the message out about what we are doing here. It would mean a great deal to Wesley, Tim, Joe, and I if you would do that. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope you continue to tune in every week. Thank you, and our podcast is coming up next. Thank you for tuning in today. We here at Foxclan Publications really appreciate every single one of you. Some things discussed in this podcast may be considered controversial. We ask that you listen with an open mind and understanding. Also, I wanted to announce that next week we will be performing a paranormal investigation. Of course, it will take a couple of weeks' time to prepare it in order to, release to the public what we find. So please be patient with us when we do that, but we are very excited in sharing that with you. Thanks again for tuning in, and the podcast begins right now. Hello, everyone. My name is Matt. Welcome to the Authors Podcast, Stepping into the Light. We have everybody joining us today and a special guest. So I really am excited about this particular episode, and I think everyone is going to enjoy this. All right. And Joe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Joe, and I'm a demonologist.
Yeah, I'm Jim. I'm a lead investigator.
I'm Wesley, and I'm a paranormal investigator and author. And today, our special guest is Melissa Pritchard, also known as Melissa Fox from A Haunting. All right, Matt, back to you.
All right, Melissa. And would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into the interview?
My name is Melissa Pritchard. I really don't know what to say. I'm a psychic empath. I work with Branson Paranormal. I used to actually be part of the team full time. I'm not really active as of right now. I have a lot going on in my life, so I stay busy doing a lot of other things currently. But anytime the team needs me, of course, they can call me, and I am available.
I appreciate that. It's nice to meet you. All of them know you, but it's my first time. And what I would like to know, Melissa, tell us a little bit how you got involved with it.
I've always had gifts ever since I was really small. I've been able to see spirits, feel spirits, talk to them, hear them. And I actually met Wesley. We started dating and got engaged. Of course, the engagement didn't work out, but we continue to remain friends. So, he moved out of state, so he's no longer where I am, but we're still friends. And anytime that they need any, I don't want to say help, but anytime that they do an investigation that calls for my particular gifts, I'm available. So we used to do a lot of investigating together, especially in the Branson area. But we actually traveled all over the place. We went down to Mississippi. We went to Arkansas. We of course went to Iowa, where Tim is. So we've went all over the place.
Georgia.
Yeah, we went to Georgia. Macon, Georgia.
Yep.
Wasn't it? It was Macon, Georgia. Yeah. So anytime that it's kind of interesting because Wesley didn't really, I don't think, fully believe my gifts. And whenever I would tell him, well, this is happening or that's happening, he's like, no. Until we did an investigation in Mount Vernon, Missouri, and I'm telling him to shut up. I'm like, there's kids laughing. You can hear them laughing. He's like, no, you can't. Until he went back over and was listening to the EVPs, and he's like, oh my gosh. That was an interesting case.
Yes, it was.
I remember.
There's a lot of people that when they first get involved in something like this, that they go into it very skeptically, like, it's probably not real. There's a logical explanation. People go in with that mindset. One of the things that sticks out as I've gotten to know Wesley and more recently Joe and Tim is that they have legitimate proof and evidence of what has happened. It's been really eye-opening. But I've noticed that a lot of investigators, they say that they continue to be skeptics as they go through this, which tells me that they're frauds. Basically, is what that tells me. What's interesting is I've noticed just how legitimate you guys are. So that's what really makes me excited about this particular podcast. But anyways, Melissa, tell me a little bit more. Expand on your gifts. Tell us a little bit about them. I would really be interested in hearing about it.
Well, my gifts, I've had them for as long as I can remember. Whenever I was really little, my grandfather actually passed away before I was ever even born. And my mom used to tell me that I used to tell her about the man in the white shirt. And she asked me, she goes, do you know who that was? And I'm like, no, I don't know who it was, but I could describe him to a T. And anytime that I would describe him, it would be, my grandfather. Well, of course, I'd seen pictures of my grandpa, but I saw pictures of my grandfather whenever he was older, and I never met him. But some of the things that he would do, the cigarette brands that he smoked, the way that he would roll his cigarettes up in his sleeve is things that, of course, there wasn't pictures of that I could tell my mom about. Whenever I was really young, well, I was probably 3 or 4, we lived in a lot of haunted houses. We lived in a lot of old farmhouses because Missouri's, has a lot of really small towns. And we lived in, of course, smaller communities. Pleasant Hope was one of them, and they have a lot of history there. And we lived in a house that was an old Civil War house that, I could hear the kids playing in the attic and, tell my dad about some of the stuff that had happened. And he's like, Melissa, how did you know about that? And I'm like, because I can talk to them. I can hear them. Which was interesting because, my dad was one that he told me, he goes, well, I can hear them too. So it was something that, just the various houses that I lived in growing up, I could tell you things that had happened. And whenever we would actually do research, whenever I was older, are things that actually occurred in the house. So it's just something that I've always had, I've always experienced. I talked to ghosts whenever I was little. My mom used to call them my imaginary friends. But for me, it's been normal and common my whole life.
And do you have any examples of some things that they've said to you maybe, or that you learned from talking to them?
Well, I've learned definitely that heaven and hell is real. One of the things that a friend of ours had once told me, because she asked me about whenever I was a baby, that type of stuff, and my mom used to tell me stories about whenever I was born, because my mom actually died whenever I was being born. And she told me that because the doctor lost my heartbeat as well as my mom's heartbeat, that I actually went over to the other side. And that's the reason why I can see it. I can see what I see. I can feel what I feel. I can hear what I hear, is because I've been both to heaven and then I've been back here on earth. So that's the way she explained to me as far as why I know. How do I explain this without? That's the reason why I have the gifts that I have. particularly because there was a house in Hollister that we actually investigated a couple of times, and there was a small child there that they would leave toys out for the child to play with, and the child actually needed to pass over. And I was told that that's one of my particular gifts, is to help people pass from here to there. And the reason why I think it took us 2 times was because the boy was looking for his mom. And whenever, we did research on that one, didn't we, Wesley, to find out what happened to his mother?
Yeah, but I don't think we ever found out. The only thing I really remember about that is your visitor. Like the next day.
So, and he followed me home. He sat in the car next to me and had an actual conversation with me. And, I was finally able to get him to actually pass over, and they didn't have any more issues in their house after that point. The toys were no longer played with, which their son was, I think, happy and sad about that because his little friend was gone.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe that. Now, how did you get involved in what I'm calling hotel hell, which we all know is the bed and breakfast?
Well, with that one, it was 2 of our mutual friends that I don't know if I can say their names on here or not. They came into the ghost tour office and was talking to you about it, and you came home and you're like, Melissa, you've got to hear about this place. And you start telling me about it, and I was intrigued because of all of this, the activity that they had described, happening. Well, whenever we went and I stepped foot on that property, I'm like, I don't know if I want to be here. Because things started happening that first night that we went there. But they talked about, they talked about the pendulum in the kitchen, didn't they?
They talked about that, but one thing I do remember from that first trip that you may or may not is you feeling really sick and having like really bad cramps in your stomach, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I do remember that because I felt like I was in labor almost. Or I can, imagine what labor would feel like because I've never been in labor. I had a C-section with my child, but the worst possible cramps that I have ever felt in my life, and I got nauseous. I remember that because I thought I was going to throw up. And it was, it was not a fun experience. And then the next time you wanted to go back, I'm like, I don't know about this.
It was the next weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Any of you 3 want to expand on your interaction with her during this situation?
Well, how about how they got involved?
Yes.
Remember, Tim would have been involved first.
Yeah. They got involved because Wes contacted me and he had this hotel he wanted us to go investigate. So I jumped in the truck and went over there and got into the place. And it is, once you step foot, it was pretty much, it was a big place, 15,000 square feet. That's a lot of room to try to investigate at one time. So we were trying to get as many people together as we could to do some investigation in there. And we had some equipment, and getting in that place, Melissa's right. The second you stepped through the door, you knew something was going to happen. You could just tell that there was activity there, and there was a lot of it. I mean, the first time I went there too, there was a lot of it. And I remember Melissa being sick. I remember her having a hard time being in the place. She wanted to be out of it all the time and leave. That was a big deal. But I get involved because, we like to investigate together, and it was a huge, 15,000 square feet, if I remember right, 3 stories. It was huge. It was a huge hotel.
Joe, how did you get involved?
Well, you called me, and at that time, we were doing, our cases were just coming and coming. So when I got up there the first time, we did a paranormal tour or something through it, and it's funny because I went in there and I knew they were there, but they were not down the second floor. They were on the third. But then when the crowd started coming in, I think it was with Tim, I'm not sure, but I was down the first level basement, they were called, I guess, and I'm trying to remember where it was at, but there was it wasn't, I think it was near where the actress used to live with the big bathtub or something. I heard footsteps, and I ran around real quick, and there was nobody there, and they had a celebrity and his girlfriend there, and he was going to buy the place because he was talking to me with the girl, and the girlfriend wasn't crazy about it, but he was. He said, I don't believe in this stuff. He said, I think I'm going to buy this place and blah, blah, blah. Yep. So I kind of go back and forth. Well, we left, and he went with, if I can say his name, Jamie, which is a great guy. Him and his other friend, I can't remember him, but they brought him back in. He was in less than a couple of minutes. He saw something, and whatever it was scared the crap out of him. He came running out of there, and he says, man, that place is real. And what I thought was interesting was there was no life in the place. There was no bugs, there was no flies, there was no rodents, there was nothing. Now, there was a homeless person that lived there, I should say existed there. We found the cot, we found some of the bedding, and we found the bike, but we didn't find him. Now, he could have just ran out. So, I mean, I can go further, but and then I came back again, and then we started the investigation. But I'll get back to let Tim or Wesley go, because that's we haven't gotten that far. So, but that's how I heard about it. I've been there the first time. So, but I'll go on and explain.
My first time being involved, of course, like Melissa was saying, the people in the ghost tour came in and said, hey, we know about you and your partner, Melissa, and we know you guys deal a lot with the demonic. What would you think about helping us out with this investigation? And when we found out about the place and looked it up, it was like, oh, wait, this is a place we've been looking for an owner so we can investigate it, but we can never find an owner. But this couple had permission, so we went. I didn't notice a whole lot going on that first night in general, other than, seeing the cramps with Melissa. And then I don't know for fact, but I remember as we were leaving one of the upstairs bedrooms, I just happened to glance in for a second as I'm getting ready to walk down the stairs. And then all of a sudden there's a figure there. And it was like a weird doctor figure. It looked like it had like the doctor white coat on and stuff. That I remember, but I didn't know really if that was just my imagination or if it was real. It wasn't until later on that I figured out that that's real. And
that place is very haunted.
And I know Melissa said she's back.
All right, thanks for telling us a little bit about the backstory there. All the listeners are probably listening with their ear straight to their speakers, excited about all of this. So, Melissa, tell us a little bit more about your experience with what he's calling Hotel Hell, based on the book that he released.
I don't know if Wesley remembers it, but whenever we first walked in, there's 3 floors to this thing. Whenever you walk in, you're on the main floor, and that's where I was having the cramping and getting nauseous. But do you remember whenever we went downstairs and went into the room I called the fun house room, and I got turned around backwards and I couldn't figure out where we were?
Yeah.
I remember that and that contributed to my stomach and my sickness and feeling like I was going to just throw up and hurl everywhere. It was like going into a fun house where your brain just kind of, and your head just, everything just starts swimming. And that was on the bottom floor of the hotel. And it was just the strangest experience because it was just that one room. You walk into it and almost immediately everything just starts spinning. I don't think, did everyone experience that, or was that just me?
I think it was you and about 2 others. And I think one of them was your close friend.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she did too. I remember that. And I'm trying to think, was that first night, was that whenever we were hearing the wheels squeaking too? and we couldn't
Yes.
figure out what that was until later we found out that it sounded like a gurney is what it sounded like.
Yeah, and I think it was the second time we were there is when, well, you come up to me and said, Wesley, we have to leave. We have to go right now. There's
Yeah.
something bad. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. It was growling. I was hearing growling and snarling, and I could smell it. It smelled like rotten, like death. And I had never felt panic like that before because I started crying. And you're just like, calm down. It's fine. It'll be fine. I'm like, no, we have got to leave now.
Yeah, 'cause I think I kept on trying to tell you, no, we'll stay and, we can fight it. We can kick its butt because Mr. Ego here.
Yeah, and I told you I was leaving with or without you, if I'm not mistaken.
You did. So I left with you. I didn't agree with it at the time, but, looking back, I'm really glad we did because we didn't have the means to fight it at that point, really.
No, we didn't. We were not prepared at all. And that was what I'm trying to remember, because we went back so many times. I'm trying to remember if it was the second night that we found the pendulum with the Ouija board with a flower. Was it the second night or the second time we went there, or the third time that we went there?
I don't remember, but I'm thinking second sounds about right.
I was thinking it was the second night because we were down there, and that's whenever I started hearing it. Was whenever we were in the kitchen, and I'm like, I don't want to be in here anymore. So we went through the funhouse room, and I got a little dizzy and a little disoriented there, and I finally got up the stairs. And I told you whenever we got on the middle floor of the second, I was like, I'm leaving. We got to get out of here, because at that point, everything was just, I felt like the whole building was just closing in on me, and I could hear the growling, the snarling, and the smells, and just, it was so overwhelming that I couldn't do it. I could not be in that building any longer.
Well, I know there was you, and then there was another person that has abilities as well.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite as defined as yours, but he was saying the exact same thing.
Yeah.
That we have to go.
Yeah, whenever we finally got outside the building and across the street, that's the night that everything was just dead silent outside. There was no sound of anything, no crickets, no nothing that night. And you were like, well, that's kind of weird. And then we did some research later, and we found that that's usually whenever, demonic things are more active, is whenever there's not any insects or, outside noises that are normally there.
I know we went several times, and then we'll get into the whole Kinsey part real quick. But Kinsey, Tim's relative, was going to come down with Tim, and she did some investigating with us from time to time. Mm-hmm. So Wesley got the bright idea, hey, let's take her to the bed and breakfast. This will be awesome. And it wasn't so awesome. Tim, can you bring us into that night?
Oh man, I tell you what, that was something that I'll never forget. As long as I live, I'll never forget it. So we were there, and we were all inside. It was, I don't know, I think there was like 6 or 7 of us that were in there, and we were inside in the middle room, on the middle floor. Sorry, and we were near the staircase. And we'd walked through the whole building and was looking at things. Well, we went into the basement. Me and Kinsey and Aaron went in the basement, and we were down there just investigating around. And I was looking down this hallway. There's an old elevator shaft right there off the kitchen, and I was trying to film in there, look at things, and we walked around. Well, I turned to look the other way in the kitchen, and Kinsey screamed really loud. And you guys were up on the 3rd floor, and you heard the scream, and you called me on a walkie-talkie, and that's what was going on. I told you Kinsey just saw a demon by that elevator shaft. So we got back together, and I think a couple of people left after that. Anyway,
Jamie.
we stayed around the middle. We were on the middle floor. And we were going to go up to the third floor because we hadn't been up there yet. We were going to take Kenzie to the third floor. We got to the bottom of the stairs, the third floor by the front entrance, and looked up the stairs, and we stopped. And I stopped at the bottom of the stairs, and I could not see anything up the stairwell. I could not see the third floor. It was turning black. And I saw the black mist starting coming down the stairs toward me. And I saw a black streak fly over my head. And as they did, they went across in another room. And I looked at everybody. And at that moment, I didn't realize Kenzie's eyes were kind of big and glassy looking, but I didn't think anything of it. We went up the stairs. The black was gone. Went up the stairs. We got to the top. She said, I need to go to the third door on the right. I have to go to the third door on the right. Well, you and I took a look to the left, and we saw a shadow go across the hallway, and Kenzie took off down the other way, and Aaron went and grabbed her. And she fought with us. Literally, this girl weighed 100 pounds, and she was as strong as she could get. I mean, she was powerful. It took me and Aaron both to get her down the stairs. We got her outside onto the front step, and she fell down on the concrete and curled up in a ball and started saying, it's inside me, he's inside me, he's inside me, kept saying that. Well, she finally slid back against the railing, and there she sat, and you were trying to call Melissa at the time, and so we were sitting there, and then you touched her on the head, and she started screaming again, and then we sat there, and Aaron kept looking at her, and I was looking at her, and I kept rubbing her head because calling her Kenzie. And she looked at me, and I said, do you know who I am? And she called me by my real name. She's never, ever spoke my real name before. And her grin, I swear, was the biggest grin I ever seen in my life, and her eyes turned dark. This was not the girl that I knew my whole life. And she started laughing, just literally laughing. We got the evidence of it. We got the video of this, evidence of this.
Got the video.
She
We
started
are going to
laughing
play
and
some of that video.
Correct. She started screaming, I want to go back inside. I want to go back inside. And I said, you can't go back inside. And she looked at me, and I got this real bad headache. She said, you have no God. And I went, oh, I got a God that's going to kick your ass. And then she kind of passed out, and Aaron grabbed her and held on to her, and he kind of passed out, blacked out. And we were tapping him, let go, let go, let go. And he finally let go of her. And this girl growled and screamed and spoke in language that we still don't understand. We wrestled her down off the property underneath the street light, trying to get her to calm down, and she was just giggling and laughing, and it was evil giggling and laugh. It was horrible. And so she started screaming, help me, and his car started driving by.
In the innocent child voice, help me,
Correct.
help me.
Help me. And this car drove by, and we thought, oh crap, this is not good. We're holding this girl down underneath the street light, and she's screaming, help me. So the car turned around, came back, and we went up and got my truck, and she fought with us all the way back to your house. Literally laid in the back seat and growled and cussed and said stuff we didn't know what she was saying, and then got her to your house, and it took us 3 hours to get the two demons out of this girl. Her necklace.
Melissa had a big part in that.
You need to make
it
sure.
was like,
Yeah, and Aaron's not small by any means. I mean, Kenzie was what, 110 pounds? Aaron is 6'4" and weighed 190.
Yeah.
He was huge. And
he could barely hold her down. I mean, it took, we got her back, and we had to do this exorcism on her, and it took like 8 of us to hold this girl to the floor.
Well, I was sitting on her. Sitting on her, and I'm not small by any means. And she was raising me up off the ground.
Correct. It was amazing. It was quite, I'll never forget it in my life because
you left 3 scratches on the wood floor. I remember that.
Correct.
Well, and she ripped the whole back off of our couch.
Off the couch. She threw her medallion. She was wearing a necklace and a medallion, and we got her back to the house, and we couldn't find it. We went back the next day and found it on the front porch. She literally grabbed this thing and ripped it off. She ripped it off her body. And we got her out the door. I mean, it took both of us to get her down the stairs in that place. I mean, she was fighting. she did not want to leave that building. She did not want to go outside. It was pretty intense. I never want to go through that again if I don't have to. I'll tell you what.
Well, of course, I was trying to, while that was happening, I was trying to call Melissa,
Sure.
and I called Joe, and it just, voicemail.
Yeah.
So he probably had about 20 missed calls from me that night. And
Yeah,
then
my
Sure.
phone number
I
showed the
called
numbers.
Melissa and said, hey, you need to
Yeah.
get the exorcism stuff ready because Kenzie's under possession. We'll bring her to the house as soon as we get her in the truck.
Yeah, and not to interrupt, but I was out cold, and usually I'm not like that. My phone, because my job, I would hear my phone also. Never heard the phone, and Wesley's number never appeared. So that's gospel. So that's what happened there. Because if I would have got the call, I would have gotten up, and we would have gotten that thing out there a lot sooner.
Yeah. And all the way back, Aaron was holding her in the back seat, and took him and I think Brandon both to hold her in the back seat because she literally fought and growled. She was speaking languages we didn't know what the heck. She was also reciting. What was she reciting backwards?
It sounded almost like Amazing Grace backwards.
Yeah, she was reciting like a prayer backwards the whole time, and she would mumble stuff. And it told us too that, and that's where we go back to where we talk about being asleep, like Joe talked about. It actually said we want to talk to Kenzie, and it said you can't because she's asleep. That's what she told us. Kenzie's asleep, so that did happen.
I remember her spinning.
Yeah. Today, she's got a boyfriend. She just graduated college. She lives in Omaha. She's working for the government, believe it or not, and the Air Force, and she's doing really, really good to this day. She really, made a change in her life. She really has. I saw her last week, as a matter of fact. Yeah. That's a night I'll never forget.
I don't think that any of us will ever forget that night. Everything changed from that point forward.
Right. And that just shows you how bad or how evil and bad this hotel was. Just how it was just that bad in that place. It really was. So, and yeah, the growling and the footsteps and you name it, it happened. Apparitions appearing, white mist, everything you could think of in an investigation happened. So, yeah.
How did things change from that point forward?
Well, a lot of things changed, honestly. Relationships changed. As far as, the boys, everything it got more stressful at the house. Our house itself, there was a lot of activity that was not there before. After we started investigating that particular hotel, everything changed at our house. We started having do you remember whenever my keys went missing?
Yeah.
I looked all over that house for my car keys. Could not find them anywhere. Ended up having to take my spare set to work with me. They were in my shoes. My shoes were nowhere near where my keys were. Just crazy stuff like that would happen constantly.
Well, and I know from that point forward, I already like to drink, but from that point forward, it seemed like I really got bad in alcohol.
Yes, you did.
Well, that event affected every one of us, and still does today, I think. At the point.
Well, I know I pray a lot more now than I used to. From that point, I've always, prayed every morning whenever I wake up or before I go to bed. But it definitely has changed things to where, I read my Bible. I do the things that I should have been doing all along. But it definitely made me to where, I definitely want my relationship with God to be a lot stronger than what it ever had been in the past.
Exactly.
If I can say,
people, yes, go ahead, Joe.
well, it affected all of us because, see, these demonic beings study us, and they observe us, and they listen to what we say. Now, I don't know if they can read our minds. I don't know about that part, but I think they watch us like watching a movie, and they've been around a lot longer than we have. So what this particular demon did in that place was, it could have been, I can later get into it, it was almost like the demonic, there were several demons in there, but I think one was the demon of chaos or confusion. And it got to all of us, and it started working within. And it was destroying all of us, doing things that normally we wouldn't do. But God, in His good graces, sometimes intercedes, and we realize what we did, and it changed us for the better because we learn from our mistakes. You just don't repeat them. And if you truly love God, and God does truly love us, then we forgive. God forgives us. We forgive people around us, and we forgive ourselves. Now, you can't really throw the first stone because a lot of people do that, and there's all of us in our backyards. But saying that, yeah, it affected Wesley, and it affected me, Melissa, Tim, and Tim and me there's a story with Mackenzie is a little bit intense, but that's for another time. But anyways, yes, I would like to say, I think we all came back stronger, and we asked for forgiveness. Yeah.
On this episode, just we'll just get everything in the same timeline.
Yeah.
Because now we're to the point of after Kenzie. I think it was Joe. I think it was you that got the idea. Hey, let's do a documentary on this place.
Yes.
And I'll come back down, and we'll get some cameras and do an actual investigation. I love the idea. I think Tim liked it but didn't love it. But he was more than willing to go.
Yeah.
And I don't think Melissa was too much into it.
No.
At that point.
Yeah.
Well,
I wasn't.
No, go ahead.
I think the story of that place needs to get out because people need to realize how bad things can get if if you let them, so to speak. And a lot of the things that people play with that they think, oh, this isn't going to do anything, it can do things. It does do things, and I think people need to realize that and know the implications of what can happen. Because I'm sure the people, that drew the pendulum and was in there, playing with the Ouija board, I'm sure that they didn't think of the implications that could actually happen with them doing this. But but in reality, a lot of that contributed to what happened whenever we were there. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. And so, with that influence, how many times have we been in there before in the episode and not realize what was actually there, and it took Kenzie to realize how bad it really was to this fact.
Well, and some of the people that we actually brought in there that we didn't really realize participated in witchcraft and various different things so it made us a lot more careful, I think, with who we took with us whenever we did investigations from that point forward. We don't just say, oh yeah, sure. We want to know a little bit about the team before we say, okay, yeah, we'll investigate with you. I think, at least on my end, it's made me more cautious.
That's a true statement.
Thank you for tuning in to today's podcast. Due to the length of time of the interview with Melissa, I have decided to split this up into 2 parts. The rest of this episode will be featured this Thursday at 7 p.m. Please tune in again to finish the interview. And thanks again, we appreciate all of your support. Also, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. It helps our channel grow tremendously, and we can't thank you enough for doing so in advance. This has been Foxclan Podcast. Please tune in again this Thursday.